Sometimes all it takes in life is an unforeseen accident to turn your life totally and irrevocably upside down. And every accident sometimes has some unforeseen surprise after effects you never could have imagined. Traumatic brain injury. This is the story of Lida Fitpatrick, a beautiful, brilliant, and successful high-tech entrepreneur whose life imploded after a serious rear-end accident one night on May 25, 2019.
On May 5, 2019, when Barstow towing employee Alicia Benavides failed to follow California Vehicle Code 22350 and slammed into the rear of a small civilian vehicle, causing severe and life-altering injuries to Lida Fitpatrick. Lida Fitpatrick, a loving mother and highly intelligent and successful entrepreneur, was driving the speed limit on her way to visit her son, when suddenly the tow truck behind her failed to change lanes or notice her and slammed into her rear at a high velocity. The collision knocked Lida unconscious and caused severe trauma to her right knee. Upon arriving at the hospital, it was clear that she had suffered many injuries that include a left knee meniscus tear, multiple cervical disc bulges, and a severe concussion. Several weeks later, after noticing blurred vision, she underwent multiple MRIs, and it was determined that she would suffer from a devastating traumatic brain injury, post-concussive syndrome, traumatic disequilibrium syndrome, post-concussive headache, occipital neuralgia, neck spasms, lower back spasms, generalized anxiety disorder, and post-traumatic depression. Upon further examination, a significant presence of hydrocephalus was discovered. Cerebral spine fluid was filling the ventricles in her brain and putting abnormal pressure to multiple points and causing a dramatic decrease in her cognitive abilities. Now, several years later, the hydrocephalus has destroyed her mental capacity and thrust her into a dark depression. She is bedridden much of the time with intense light sensitivity, forgetfulness, dizziness, and blurred vision. The pressure on her brain has stripped her of her ability to function in the way she used to.
Oh, destroyed my back. It destroyed my neck, my back. My back.
After many psychological examinations, Dr. Hilda Kalgugian states that Lida's current issues in tracking and concentration, executive functions, short-term memory, learning, particularly visual spatial, constructive, and perceptual processing speed, emotional functions are significantly below what would be expected of her, given her history of disruptive and significant inventions in the engineering field. As a once prestigious technology inventor with many patents under her name, these cognitive deficits have completely and drastically changed her life. Her inability to think clearly and work at the level she used to have caused a devastating emotional battle with depression. The pain in her knee resulting from the meniscus tear makes it excruciating to walk. She will require future surgery, including a knee arthroscopy. However, Dr. William McGann opines that he does not think the patient has the rehabilitative capacity to deal with a recovery. In order to drain the fluid from her brain and restore her mental capacity, Lida was recommended to undergo a complex procedure to install a shunt. The placement of a shunt comes with many complications and will require constant care and future replacement.
I just was like, oh, it's a crash. She's gonna get better. It's totally fine. She's handled so much before in her life. She's gonna bounce back. It's totally cool. And I realized that that's just not happening. You know, my brother and I were talking and saying, hey, this is very serious.
Come with me. No, he needs to come with me.
Okay.
Lida has lost all independence, and the burden on her family is great. Before the incident, Lida was an energetic, outgoing mother who brought life to every situation she was in.
There's like this outdoor shopping center area, I think it was out here actually, And like there's just like the auditorium, and the band was like off or something like that. In between, she just goes up there and just starts singing and can get an audience there. She has a great voice, so and she can get an audience there, and they all listen. She sang out like 4 or 5 songs, which is ballsy enough to do, but she could do those kind of things.
She doesn't give 2 craps about who's around and what people think of her. And she would be the person to sing that song, or if someone's, shy at a party, she would pull them onto the dance floor, and she'd be that person to get everyone dancing and everyone excited. And I always had the coolest mom that everyone wanted,
She was very active and lived life to the fullest.
She would literally go to the pool every day, and if I was around, she'd drag my butt into the pool. No matter how cold the water was, too, she'd be like, this is actually good for you. It gets the blood flowing, it gets it going.
With so much life and energy, she would always find a way to get out of the house and travel as much as she could.
100% independent. Yeah, there was no, she wasn't dependent on anybody. Everything on her own. She would travel on her own. If she wanted to take a trip and we couldn't make it, Lida would just go, and do it herself, and have a good time and come back.
In order to provide a loving, fulfilling, and exciting life for her family, Lida worked exceptionally hard to build an astounding career as an inventor and technology pioneer. After graduating from MIT with a degree in computer engineering, Lida was involved with many groundbreaking startups throughout a decades-long career, including Steve Jobs' original tech company, Next. With countless patents under her name, many of Lida's ideas provided the groundwork for the technology that created the billion-dollar video streaming industry that we use today. After easing out of the tech industry, Lida took her intelligence and cunning eye into investing, and was a successful day trader in the years preceding the incident. The breadwinner of the family, Lida was able to ensure that her mother, who requires 24-hour care, could live a comfortable lifestyle with them at home. Lida had many more plans for the future, including a biotech startup she wanted to pursue alongside her son, Amir. But due to the negligence of Barstow Towing, the fun, intelligent, and loving Lida that her family cherished has been taken from them. Without being able to operate on her knee, and with the significant effects of her traumatic brain injury, Lida's quality of life has diminished immensely, and she is now completely dependent on her family. The lasting effects of the cerebral spinal fluid in her brain include forgetfulness, memory loss, blurred vision, light sensitivity, mood swings, confusion, loss of coordination and balance, loss of reasoning skills, and the knowledge of her issues that have thrust her into a deep depression. Medical reports further indicate that her neurological health has deteriorated, showing a lack of signal function in her brain due to the trauma.
For a week or so at a time, just be not even like a shadow of herself, like a completely different person, not sleep well, not be able to eat well, kind of losing motor skills.
All of these detrimental disabilities have made it impossible for Lida to function professionally at the level she used to. Once the intelligent, high-functioning inventor and main source of income for the family, her inability to work has had a detrimental impact on everyone. With her grandmother in need of constant care from their uncle, Amir and Lena have had to take on countless responsibilities in caring for Lida, putting their lives on hold. Lida is in desperate need of help, and the shunt procedure, despite its many complications, may be her only solution. She will likely require constant care for the rest of her life. Her family struggles with the fact that they will never again be able to enjoy the lively, intelligent, outgoing Lida.
Proving traumatic brain injuries in court can be challenging due to its subtle nature and lack of visible physical signs. TBIs have been referred to as silent. This does not mean problems associated with TBI are not significant and life-altering. Instead, it means that many people are unaware of the type of damage a TBI can cause. Key elements include strong medical evidence, including imaging and cognitive tests, documentation of symptoms and daily life impact, and potentially expert testimony to counter insurance companies' arguments. Unlike other types of injuries, brain injuries aren't visible. Proving that you suffered one requires a significant amount of evidence, including testimonies from expert witnesses. What's more, you can expect insurance companies to dispute all of it and claim you are malingering. One of the most difficult aspects of TBI is that they aren't always immediately apparent. TBI symptoms can take days to become noticeable, which delays treatment. When you hit your head hard enough for your brain to bounce inside your skull, damage to blood vessels and brain tissue leads to chemical changes, making your cells function differently from how they should. Today, our investigative news team sits down with Christopher Ardalan, founder and partner at Ardalan Associates law firm, to discuss the very unique challenges and hurdles in this case and how his extensive knowledge and experience in TBI cases led to a successful outcome for his client. Annually, 2.5 million people experience a traumatic brain injury, but only 16.67% are hospitalized. Instead, 2.2 million of those injured with a TBI are treated in the emergency room and released. Of the remainder, 280,000 people are admitted to a hospital and 50,000 die. Christopher has earned a reputation as an unyielding trial lawyer who repeatedly represents individuals and families against big companies and the Goliaths of the world, and repeatedly wins. And his amazing courtroom skills and headline-grabbing success rate continue to provide his clients with the results they need and the results they deserve. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Thousand Oaks, California. It is my great pleasure to introduce Chris Ardalan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Tell our audience a little bit about your firm and what you guys specialize in.
Yeah, we have a boutique trial law firm out in Thousand Oaks, California, and we really specialize in catastrophic injury and wrongful death cases for people that have been harmed because of the carelessness of others.
Chris, tell our audience who Lida Fitpatrick is.
Lida was such a dynamic woman. She immigrated to the United States in the late 70s, early 80s. She fled the country during the Revolution, right when they were on the cusp of the country of Iran going to fall apart. She came here alone with her two younger siblings, and she stayed in Massachusetts, where she followed through and got an education at some of the top tier colleges. She did courses at MIT, UMass, and she ended up graduating there and getting hired by a Silicon Valley firm.
She was brilliant.
She was a young graduate. She was a woman who in the 1980s got into the Silicon Valley in the tech sector. She worked with a team that created the SCSI drive, which allowed big computers to be able to become desktop computers and the computers that we know today. She worked with major companies, Steve Jobs' company, which was Next, and others, and she really became a dynamic force, having to come and immigrate into a new country and be a woman in that tech industry in the 80s was not an easy feat.
In all of this, how did her case end up with you? And what happened to her?
So she was being represented by a law firm down in Los Angeles for many years. The attorney who was supposed to try the case for her got a diagnosis of cancer, and he had to get treatment for it. And this case had been continued before, and she wasn't doing well, and they didn't want to continue it again. So I stepped into the case 2 weeks before the trial.
Not knowing anything about it.
Not knowing anything, didn't even have a file.
Didn't ask for an extension.
Didn't ask for an extension. They wanted me to come in and try the case. I immersed myself over the next 2 weeks trying to develop the story that I was going to be able to tell this jury, learn about this woman, learn about what happened to her, and master all the information that was given to me to be able to try this case. Meanwhile, there were still depositions going on in those 2 weeks and motion work and other things. That trial was 7 weeks in San Bernardino. It was no short trial. There was probably over 20 some odd witnesses, renowned experts, neurologists, neuropsychologists, neurosurgeons, life care planners. I mean, it was a lot.
She had been rear-ended by a tow truck company that had an insurance policy in place, right? And seems pretty simple from the defense side, right? Here's our policy. Yeah, they're not going to give it to you right away, but here's what we're going to pay. This is the max on it. But you discovered something else, didn't you?
They never believed that she suffered a traumatic brain injury because of this crash. I mean, she was rear-ended. She didn't go by ambulance anywhere. She waited a day to go to the hospital, and she took a MRI. They took a CT of the head, and it showed there was nothing there. They thought she just had a mild concussion. And the onset of her problems didn't really get noticeable for some time. It took almost a year, almost 11 months before she ended up in a doctor for the first time for her brain issues, where she did some neuropsychological testing that showed some decrease in her cognitive abilities and her IQ. And then it took almost another year before they realized she had hydrocephalus of the brain. So they thought this was all unrelated. She had Alzheimer's or dementia that came on with her age and had nothing to do with this accident that happened on the 15th. And so the problem obviously with this was causation was approved. So the insurance company was very valiant about it. They never offered the policy, even though it was demanded. It was $1 million policy. It was demanded several times. And they never offered more than $500,000 until just before trial, where they said, okay, we'll put up our $1 million. Well, under the law in California, if they had an opportunity to settle within the policy and they failed to do it, they're acting in bad faith to their insured, and technically they could be on the hook for the entire verdict.
So let me stop you there. Technically, they could be on the hook for the verdict, meaning how much more money would they have to pay if proven that they had bad faith?
The entire verdict and additional damages that their insured can claim for emotional distress and potentially punitive damages for them failing to do it if they didn't act reasonably and in good faith.
You do this in a lot of cases, or lawyers do this if they're smart, is they demand to be paid the full policy. And if the insurance company decides they don't want to pay it, they're on the hook for much more, aren't they?
Yeah, we all expect when we get insurance that our insurance company is going to act in our best interest and protect us, because we don't want to have to cut a check. That's why we get insurance. So if the other side says, hey, pay us the policy, and the insurance company wants to get a discount on that because they're cavalier and they think they know better and they're wrong, well, fairness dictates that they should pay it, because that's not a gamble that their insured signed off on. It's a gamble that the insurance company took to help their bottom line. And if they're wrong, they're responsible.
So going forward, what did you discover about Lida's medical condition?
Well, it was complicated. When I went to visit her, I realized there was no way I could have her come to trial and testify. She was too far gone. And I had to deal with that dilemma. Is how am I going to tell this woman's story without her being there? I mean, this was my first trial that I was not going to even have a plaintiff in court, and they were never going to meet her. So I had to craft that and tell the story through the eyes of her children and her husband and the people that had worked with her through time to really paint a picture of who she was, and to use a ton of photos and videos about her life just before this, and then compare that to who she was after. And that was the biggest dilemma, because when I first got into the case, I didn't have all those. I had to gather that in a very short time and learn that story to be able to effectively portray it to a jury in a way that was meaningful and make them want to act.
What were some of the challenges you had? You had the police report. I mean, initially, the police report said there's nothing wrong with her.
They called it a non-injury accident, right? There was a witness that had pulled over that had essentially given her a ride to Vegas to her son, who was waiting for her there because the car wasn't drivable, and the tow truck company that rear-ended her actually towed her car. And so she didn't go into the emergency room till at least a day and a half, 22 hours or 24 hours later, and then she ended up getting no treatment really except a CT, and told just follow up with your doctors, and then there wasn't much follow-up.
Yeah, now in the beginning of this show, we showed a video which we edited, which you provided us, of the way she is today, you know, which is very sad. I mean, one of the problems, I think, is that she remembers the way she used to be. and this is not how she likes to appear to the world, correct?
Now, if you knew who Lida was, she was an independent woman, a brilliant woman. She traveled around different countries, in countries that weren't very woman-friendly, in the Middle East, out in Asia, where she raised venture capital funds of over $25 million for an invention she created. She created an invention that we kind of take for granted today. Back in 2000, when it was Y2K and people thought everything was gonna shut down, and the internet, when you would go click on it, would still say, "You've got mail." She created a box that would stream the internet so people can watch movies on streaming back then. And she was in the race against these companies like Netflix and Samsung and all these other organizations that were trying to learn how to stream the internet. Now, ultimately, her company that she raised all this funds for, she did well for many years, but in 2012, she lost that race. And she decided to refocus her life on her family and take back the years that she didn't have because she was trying to develop this company. But to understand, she raised millions of dollars from people and angel investors and investment companies for this dream, and they were paying her for her mind, her brain. And that was the one thing that was taken away from her. And I told the jury something that I think is profound. I said to them, look, it is the worst type of injury that we can have, right? I mean, I could sit here right now, if I couldn't walk and I was paralyzed and I was talking to you, well, I could still have my mind, I can still communicate. And I have that ability to do it. I could not have any movement from my neck down and still be able to do that as long as I have my mind. Look at Stephen Hawking, right? I mean, brilliant. But when you damage someone's mind, when you take away their reality, their understanding, the way that they can see the world and to do the things, yet still for her be conscious that she's not the same, it's the worst injury anyone can have. And I think that was the profound aspect of what happened to her.
The verdict that came in was $11 million, I think, right? That's kind of amazing when you think your client never appeared in court. So you're actually painting a picture of who your client was and who they are today. And I would imagine that day in the life video played a major part, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, seeing the difference. I told the story of who this woman was up front, and then I showed them who she became. And I said, how did this woman become this woman? And then the accident was the explanation that we were telling the jury, explained it. And through the medical experts and the testimony, we were able to connect those dots. And the verdict actually, because we had beat our offer or demand of $1 million, we got prejudgment interest and cost. The actual judgment that the court entered was over $14 million.
So in these type of cases, the defense is going to put on their experts and saying what you presented is false or it's exaggerated or whatever. How do you deal with that?
Well, fortunately for us, they had a very poor choice of experts they chose. The one expert that they had, which was their neurologist, was a neurologist over at Loma Linda at some point, I believe. He had written a piece because he was a lawyer, he had a JD, and he was a doctor. He didn't really become a doctor, we said, for noble reasons. It was really for interesting and challenging things, but he never practiced law. Yet he did write an article about how to recharacterize, manipulate jurors and how to dress and what not to rely on. And
didn't play well.
Did not play well with the jury. And then their neuropsychologist that they used had failed the board several times. And we got the data underneath and gave it to a neuropsychologist, or actually a psychologist, to look at how he did the testing. And we were able to show he cheated. And the way that he was doing the testing wasn't fair and it wasn't right.
So she had to be tested separately by their so-called experts.
It was a real unfair evaluation of her condition, and the conclusions they reached were very inconsistent. And through effective efforts that we took in cross-examination and the work that was done, we were able to expose it in a way that I think upset the jury about what the defense was trying to do. And, that's really kind of the pursuit that we have here as lawyers when we're fighting these fights, the pursuit for the truth. and to be able to clear the dust that's being kicked up by the defense to try to confuse and distract the people that ultimately have to make a decision for people that were harmed that need their help.
Right. In all of these TBI cases, traumatic brain injury cases, they're challenging. When you look at a potential case about whether you want to take it on, what are you looking for? Because at that point in time, you really don't know anything.
Thank goodness at this point in our technology, there's better systems to evaluate it, right? We have better imaging. There's better MRIs that can show damage. One of the things that I'm looking for is through others' eyes and lenses around them, how did this person change and how dramatic it is? And there's telltale signs. Our brain is a magnificent thing. It controls the way that we behave. It controls our emotions. It controls movement. It controls hearing, vision, everything. It's our central computer chip that controls everything else in our life. And if there's damage to certain areas, you're going to see an impact in those areas. And you look to see how different that person is. You look to see those changes. And then you see if it's supported by the imaging. You see if the medical records and the doctors are noting it and noticing it. There was a very thorough dive here because it's an invisible injury. The people that the jury may see if they actually meet that person is the person that's there, and they don't know what was there before. And if you can't paint a perfect picture between the before and after with some event that is the event you're saying is responsible for it as the cause, you can't win those cases.
Well, they certainly are challenging. What are your recommendations to people who unfortunately may have, an injury with a possible traumatic brain injury associated with it?
The thing about traumatic brain injuries is that they all present differently. One of our experts said, if you've seen one traumatic brain injury, you've seen one traumatic brain injury, right? Or if you've seen 100 traumatic brain injuries, you've seen one traumatic brain injury. I don't remember the exact terminology used, but the point of it is they're all unique. And everyone presents different. For some people, the injury can be very severe and the onset is immediate. They cannot be walking, they'll have a brain bleed. For others, you can have these shearing injuries where you have axonal shearing and the neurons in the brain get affected and it causes scar tissue to form in areas. And those scar tissues can affect function in a way. And it might start mild and it could progress and become worse over time. So the key is, if you get an injury and you notice differences, and you're having the headaches and you're having dizziness, and don't just think it's a concussion. Do the actual testing, do the workup to see and rule that out. It does take time because for most people, concussions resolve within a year. Almost statistics show almost 90% of people. But those 10% where the injuries are far worse and it doesn't get better, it's hard to diagnose early.
Everything in a court case is a fight. You had a life care plan. The jury awarded you $7 million. The defense, I don't even know if they would offer a life care plan because that'd be an admission that, you actually have a problem, right? Did they offer a life care plan?
They don't do their own life care plan, but what they do is they question the numbers that your life care plan has.
Let's use an example. You could be seen at the local Los Angeles hospital, which is a public hospital, whatever. The care there isn't necessarily the best care in the world. It's cheaper. And for that reason, it's cheaper. So are those the kind of numbers they're comparing it against?
It was actually even much worse than that. We talked about her needing to be in a facility with attending care and multi-specialists seeing her because, as you can see from the video, she's very debilitated and it's a lot of burden on the family, and she needs specialized care by nurses that are going to care for her and help with her to have at least the most humane existence in the time that she still has. Their life care planners and doctors were, you can go on care.com and get someone for $20 an hour to do this care. And it's a cheap alternative, and why they're suggesting that is because they save money.
And does the jury take this personally? Do you say to them, for example, how would you like someone to take care of you that they got off, Easy Reader magazine or something.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we could say that, but you can't ever have the jurors put themselves in what they would want. That would violate a very fundamental principle law called the Golden Rule. And we can't do it that way, but we do talk about it in the sense of like, what did they expect? Did they cause this harm to this person? And then the care that she needs, they're trying to be cheap about it. They don't want her to get the care that she needs for the complexity of the harm that they've caused. And they're giving you alternatives that don't make any sense for this woman's life. And it's not fair.
I saw, and we will all see in the show, in the video, that her son and her daughter have spent a lot of time with her. It's a big burden on them too, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, it's a responsibility, but it's still a burden. Do families sometimes express their frustration with taking care of their relatives that didn't need care before?
Listen, they were an amazing family, all professionals, all brilliant, just like their mom. Lida worked in high-end accounting firms, and her son was both a MBA and an MD, graduate of USC, and an innovator, just like his mother. And they all led busy lives as well. But Lida was the matriarch of that family. She carried that family. She taught her kids. She would take them to work, would do math problems as they're driving them to drop them off at school. They loved their mother in such a deep level. Seeing her go from where she was as the core of that family to being ultimately so dependent, her mind irrational, and become a shell of herself, where she is laying in bed and wanting to die, is heartbreaking. And this family sacrificed so much of their lives to be able to be there, and they couldn't get it to themselves to be able to put her into a home because they were so attached.
One last question. If you've been in an accident and you suspect that they got hit in the head, that they may have some, injuries that are not noticeable right now, what do you recommend they do?
They need to see a specialist. They need to look at the symptoms and not discount it. A headache could be a headache. That's absolutely plausible, but it could also mean something more. If it doesn't go away, if it's accompanied by dizziness, if it's accompanied by mood changes, if it's accompanied by forgetfulness, things that are just out of the norm for the person, there are specialists out there that can look into that more and determine if this is something temporary or something more severe.
Does your law firm, if somebody came to you and said, I think my mother, my father, my brother has suffered a traumatic brain injury, does your law firm recommend certain specialists to look at?
Yeah, we work with some of the top experts in the field that understand the dynamic of this injury, and we also understand it very well. So when we ask the right questions, look at the right documents, we can make a determination of who would be the right person to see to be the next step to make sure what's going on.
Well, I want to wish you much more success like you had with Lida's case, and congratulations on the case, and thank you for being with us.
I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.